Anna Wells, 32, a woman who had dedicated a decade to her family's construction company, Timber Brewing, found herself in a lawyer's office, a place of supposed finality and justice, only to be met with a cruel joke. Her brother Sebastian, with a smug grin, declared that he was inheriting the house and the business, while all she was getting were the dolls. The entire family, her own flesh and blood, erupted in laughter as if her decade of hard work was nothing more than a punchline. For 10 years, while Sebastian had partied and traveled the world on their father's dime, Anna had been the backbone of the company, working 80-hour weeks, managing contracts, and ensuring employees were paid on time. But none of that seemed to matter. Her Aunt Patricia, with a theatrical dab of a tearless tissue, remarked, "Anna always was Daddy's little princess with her dollhouse collection. At least Sebastian understands business." Anna bit her tongue, the taste of blood a bitter reminder of her silent endurance. How could Sebastian, a man who couldn't tell a 2x4 from a steel beam, possibly understand business? Sebastian, basking in the family's approval, continued his tirade, suggesting Anna could keep playing with her toys while he handled the real responsibilities. But then, a flicker of hope appeared in the form of Mr. Harrison, the family lawyer. He cleared his throat, his kind eyes holding a secret that sent a wave of anticipation through Anna. "Actually," Mr. Harrison said, his voice cutting through the laughter, "the company was never in his name." The room fell silent. Sebastian's triumphant expression melted into confusion. The family's amusement turned to stunned disbelief. For Anna, it was a moment of dangerous warmth spreading through her chest. The tables were about to turn. Growing up as the youngest in the Wells family, Anna had learned early on that her opinions didn't matter. Her father, a self-made man who built the business from a single truck, had passed away 3 months prior. Sebastian, 5 years her senior, was always the golden boy. He played football, dated the homecoming queen, and had excellent grades that were actually average. Meanwhile, Anna spent her teenage years on construction sites, learning the intricacies of concrete and blueprints. Her father would say she had a good head for numbers, as if it were a cute hobby rather than a crucial business skill. When Sebastian went backpacking through Europe, Anna stepped up, salvaging $1 million contract and restructuring benefits to keep key employees. She had mastered architectural blueprints and union negotiations, while Sebastian complained about getting his shoes dirty on the rare occasions he visited a job site. Her father, however, always told people Sebastian would take over. "He's got the Wells leadership gene," he'd say. But Anna knew better. She saw his leadership as laziness disguised by charm, yet she kept working, believing her contributions would eventually be recognized. Now, sitting in that silent office, she realized her father had seen it all along. He had known her worth. In his final days, he had whispered to her, "You've been my right hand all these years. You understand this business better than anyone." He had also mentioned her grandmother's dolls, a collection with historical significance, but a seemingly odd thing to bring up on his deathbed. "The business ownership," Sebastian demanded, his voice cracking. "What do you mean it was never in his name?" Mr. Harrison calmly pulled out a thick folder. "Your father transferred ownership of Timber Brewing to Anna 5 years ago." The room's silence was deafening. Anna's heart pounded, but she kept her expression neutral. 5 years ago, Sebastian had been finding himself in Thailand while Anna was managing the company's largest contract ever. "That's impossible," Sebastian stammered. "I'm his son. I'm supposed to inherit the business." "The will you're inheriting today pertains to Mr. Wells's personal assets," Mr. Harrison clarified. "The house, his investments, and various heirlooms. The business has belonged to Anna since 2019. Anna finally allowed herself a small, secret smile. Sebastian's face was pale with a mix of fear and respect. "This has to be a mistake," he said, his voice desperate. "Anna doesn't know anything about running a company. She's just the bookkeeper." His words, a decade-old insult, no longer stung. They were a physical blow, but they only solidified the cold, calculating resolve that had settled in her chest. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document, thick enough to be a doorstop. "I assure you there's no mistake. Miss Wells has been the sole owner and operator of Timber Brewing since September 15th, 2019. Your father made this transfer to protect the business and to ensure continuity of operations under experienced management." Experienced management. The words tasted like sweet victory. After years of being overlooked and dismissed as just the bookkeeper, Anna was finally being seen. Sebastian's panic was a sight she had waited a decade to see. The joke was no longer on her. It had been on him all along. "But I went to business school," Sebastian protested. His MBA an empty shield against my years of hard-won experience. "I have an MBA from Portland State," I replied calmly, speaking for the first time since Mr. Harrison had dropped his bombshell. "With a 2.8 GPA, in a program you took 5 years to complete because you kept taking semesters off to find yourself." The family stared at me as if I had just revealed a superpower. Aunt Patricia's jaw dropped, and my cousin Jake's coffee cup clattered to the floor, forgotten. "Anna," my stepmother Diane said sharply, "that's no way to talk to your brother." "You're right," I replied, standing for the first time. "I should probably use his proper title." I turned to Sebastian, a smirk playing on my lips. "Sebastian, as the former heir of Timber Brewing, I want to formally thank you for your years of minimal contribution to our company's success." His hands shook as the reality of my words sank in. The golden boy, accustomed to having everything handed to him, was finally facing a reality where his charm was useless. "This is ridiculous," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Father would never—" "He knew I was going to take over," he insisted. "We talked about it all the time." "You talked about it," I corrected. He listened. "There's a difference." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Perhaps I should explain the full scope of the business transfer. Miss Wells, your father was very thorough in his documentation. Would you like me to continue reading the details?" I nodded, settling back into my chair. For the first time in years, I felt exactly where I belonged. The family sat in stunned silence, their earlier celebration a distant memory as they struggled to comprehend how completely they had misjudged the situation. The transfer included all business assets. "Contracts, equipment, and intellectual property," Mr. Harrison continued. "Miss Wells also assumed all business debts and obligations, which she has been managing successfully for the past 5 years. The company's value has increased by approximately 40% under her leadership." Sebastian made a choking sound, his face turning a sickly shade of green. The 40% growth wasn't luck. It was the result of my strategic planning and countless 18-hour days that he had never bothered to acknowledge. "Now," Mr. Harrison said, "shall we continue with the personal estate distribution?" The reading of the personal estate felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. Sebastian inherited the family house, a seemingly impressive prize until Mr. Harrison mentioned the $300,000 outstanding mortgage. He also received our father's personal investments, which had been severely depleted to cover Sebastian's various business ventures and extended vacations. "The antique doll collection," Mr. Harrison announced, "goes to Anna along with all associated documentation and appraisals." Sebastian laughed. A hollow, bitter sound. "See? I told you she gets the dolls. At least some things make sense." I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was buzzing with anticipation. My father's words about the dolls not being just about sentiment echoed in my mind. "Mr. Harrison," I said carefully, "could you elaborate on the appraisals?" The elderly lawyer smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Certainly. Your grandmother's collection consists of 47 pieces, including several rare Jumo dolls from the 1870s and a complete set of early Madame Alexander collectibles. The most recent appraisal, completed last year, valued the collection at $512,000. The silence was so complete I could hear someone's stomach growl. Sebastian's laughter died in his throat, his expression that of a man who had just realized he'd been playing checkers while everyone else was playing chess. $500,000? Aunt Patricia whispered. "For dolls? Antique dolls are serious investments," Mr. Harrison explained. "Miss Wells's great-grandmother began the collection in the 1920s, and each subsequent generation has added carefully selected pieces. Your father was quite proud of Anna's knowledge of the collection's history and value. While Sebastian had been rolling his eyes at creepy old toys, I had been learning about craftsmanship, historical significance, and market appreciation. So, let me understand this," Sebastian said slowly, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Anna gets a business worth millions, plus $500,000 in antiques, and I get a house with a massive mortgage. You also get father's car," Diane offered weakly, as if a 10-year-old pickup truck could somehow balance the scales. The timber brewing company was appraised at $2.3 million as of last month, Mr. Harrison added. Miss Wells has been managing the company's finances, operations, and strategic planning for the past 5 years while maintaining her position as majority owner. I watched Sebastian do the math in his head, his face cycling through various shades of defeat. $2.3 million for the business, $500,000 for the dolls, and the immense satisfaction of finally being recognized. Meanwhile, he was left with a house he couldn't afford and a truck that needed a new transmission. "This can't be legal," he said desperately. Anna tricked him somehow. "Actually," I said, standing up and smoothing down my skirt, "I think it's time I explained exactly how this happened." I began my story. 5 years ago, while Sebastian was in Thailand, finding his spiritual center, I was managing the Patterson Heights development project, a $20 million contract that nearly fell through due to permitting issues. Sebastian's eyes darted around the room, looking for support that wasn't there. Everyone remembered the Patterson Heights project. It had been the biggest success in the company's history. I spent 3 months working with city planners, environmental consultants, and zoning committees to resolve problems that could have cost us everything, I continued. While I was doing that, our lawyer discovered that one of our subcontractors was preparing to file a lawsuit that could have bankrupted us. Your father was facing potential personal liability that could have extended to his personal assets, including the family home, Mr. Harrison confirmed. "So, he called me into his office," I said, remembering the conversation as if it were yesterday. "He said he had been watching me handle increasingly complex responsibilities, and he wanted to protect both the business and the family. The solution was to transfer ownership to someone who actually understood the company's operations." "But why didn't he tell us?" Diane asked, her voice no longer accusatory. "Because he knew exactly how you would react," I replied. "The same way you're reacting now, with shock that Anna could possibly be capable of running something more complicated than a lemonade stand." "This is insane," Sebastian finally found his voice again. "You can't just give away a multi-million-dollar company without discussing it with the family." "He didn't give it away," I said, allowing steel to creep into my voice. "I earned it. Every 18-hour day, every crisis I solved, every relationship I built with our clients and suppliers. While you were posting Instagram photos from beach resorts, I was making sure our workers had jobs to come back to." I pulled out my own folder, thick with 5 years of financial records, testimonials, and documentation of every major decision I had made. "Your father mentioned you were thorough," Mr. Harrison said. "Impressed. I learned early that in this family, you need to document everything if you want anyone to believe you actually did it," I said, glancing meaningfully at Sebastian. "Too many times I watched someone else take credit for my work." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of shock, but the uncomfortable quiet of people realizing they had been fundamentally wrong. "So what happens now?" Sebastian asked, his voice barely a whisper. I looked at him. This man who had coasted on charm and family connections his whole life, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. "Now," I said, "you figure out how to make your own way in the world, just like I did." I gathered my papers and stood up, ready to leave. But before I reached the door, I turned back. "Oh, and Sebastian, the business isn't hiring right now." The aftermath of the will reading was everything I had dreamed of. Sebastian stumbled out of Mr. Harrison's office looking like a man who had been hit by a freight train. "Anna, wait," he called after me as I reached the elevator. His voice had lost all its arrogance, replaced by desperation. "We need to talk about this." I turned to face him. "What exactly do you want to talk about, Sebastian?" "How you never once asked about my work. How you assumed you deserved to inherit a business you never bothered to understand. Or how you just spent the last hour insulting my intelligence in front of our entire family." He opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing any answer would only make things worse. "You know what the funny thing is?" I continued, stepping into the elevator. "I actually would have been willing to work with you. If you had ever shown even a tiny bit of respect for what I do, or taken 5 minutes to learn about the business, we could have been partners. But you were too busy being handed everything to notice that someone else was doing all the work."